Okay, Anup, let's go over your weather stripping project. And quite frankly, if you were already resigned to using self-adhesive, you probably wouldn't reach out to someone who makes a living selling weather stripping. So, and you can use the self-adhesive stuff. It's low-hanging fruit, and it will prove to be a maintenance issue. And however you came to possession of that door, whether you had it made or you bought it from someone else or whatever it was, unfortunately the design of quite custom steel doors is never taken into account when it comes to weather stripping them. I don't understand it, but I have this kind of conversation once a month where someone has something that cost a small fortune to have manufactured, but no provision was made to keep the elements out. Page 135, page 186. I propose that you use the 340. First of all, none of this material is available in black. You are going to have to either contend with the fact that it's going to be in dark bronze only, or once you have the material ready to install, have it all powder coated black, however you want to proceed. But everything in here we're going to be dealing with will be dark bronze, and it is not black. It's close, but it's not black. That's all there is to it. Let's begin with the two vertical sides and the header. I propose that you use the 35041 in the upper left-hand corner. Now, all of this weather stripping is really intended to be installed on the push side of an opening where you have a common frame. And what that means is, and I'm drawing a little sketch here, it's all meant to be installed this way, where the door is going to swing just like your door, like this. Well, you don't have any of this. Really all you have is, with that L-angle frame, is about 1/8 of an inch. So I propose that you modify the material and install it in a unorthodox fashion. So I would take that 35041 and I would consider installing it this way. And keep in mind, your fasteners are going to have to be very carefully calculated to not be too long, except that I would take this portion of it here and I would rip it off on a table saw or even a router table so that it looks like this at the end. Okay? And you're going to have that screw length is going to have to be very well thought out so that you are going to drill, tap machine threads into your steel frame of the proper length. They'll be quite small screws, maybe a 632 thread or maybe as big as an 832, quite small in length, so that you can tighten it down so that when the screw breaches, so that the screw does not breach through the inside face here at all. So that would be my approach. My approach, I wouldn't want to do it because of the amount of labor it's going to take. But that door was a lot of labor to begin with. It's just going to be work to weather strip this door because of what it is, because of the nature of how thick the steel is, and the fact that there was no provision made for weather stripping. With those pieces, I would miter them at the top of the opening like this. So I had an elegant sort of communication of the material in an angle. Okay, I wouldn't run one long and run the others up to it, because that butt sort of scenario is going to leave a small amount of gap in your weather stripping. So from the perspective of the two vertical jambs and the header, I would start with that material. Now, moving on to another idea, please scroll to page 203. Now, page 203 would allow you to install this material and it's fairly common material to see installed. This either spring bronze, which is the top row, the _70 material, or the V cushion, which is V cushion. Either of those could work quite elegantly in the sense that they would be installed here, and you would use those very small wafer head drive screws that are in the lower right hand corner. That would also be very elegant as well to use. By looks of your, from what I can tell from your photographs, you have adequate room between them, so that would be a reasonable material to use. Now, I don't prefer it only because, and I prefer this idea more, only because I want my barrier to be as far out to the exterior as possible. By the time the energy, the cold, the moisture gets to that spring bronze, it's already halfway into your opening. So that's why it's not my first choice. I suppose if you wanted to really get into a belt and suspenders scenario, you could consider adding it even after the fact. Because you have, because of what you have, it's all steel, you're not going to be able to retard the transmission of energy very well because you've got continuous metal pretty much through the entire opening. You might also consider in some scenario where you are perhaps trying to isolate contact from the frame to the door by the inclusion of some material that could be considered maintenance, and you'll replace it as it wears out. But making it a thermally high-performance opening is probably going to be too much to ask of this opening. So I think the two jambs and the header, we've got a good idea. Let's move to page 167, and let's talk about the top of the door. Page 167, look at the number 346. That's what's considered a drip cap. A drip cap is installed, you have your door shown in, let's look at your door in cross section, okay? And however it's actually installed, you know, this will just help illustrate. That's a drip cap right here. That will significantly help. You know, the entire face of your wall is like a sail. It collects, like a sail would collect wind for a ship. The entire face of the wall is like a sail in that it will collect water, and all of that's just going to come and drip down. And if you ever notice a steel door, it's the bottom of the door that, or the frame as well, that will rust first. Why? Well, it's not sitting in submerged water. Think of a movie theater where you've got a 30-foot tall facade and you've got a pair of exit doors. All that surface area is collecting water. It all comes down, it gets to the part of the brick facade where the frame is, curls back in, drips down the face of the frame, then inside of the gap between the door and frame will get on top of the door and then will weep down all the way through the door and then collect and pool at the bottom of the door. Same with the frame as well. It will literally be the exit point for all of the water. So any water that gets all the way up there, it will eventually exit and it will pool and collect down at the bottom and rust that out first. People who make a living installing doors and frames, once they've installed drip caps at the top of the frames, and that would be installed on the frame or maybe on the header, or maybe on your wall. I really didn't see a good photograph of the exterior elevation of the door. It's easy money. It's outrageously effective, as proven by the reports of people, again, who make a living installing doors and frames. I have had these installed on openings where how it was that water was on the inside carpeting of an exterior strip mall door, let's say, and after drip caps were installed, problem went away, or at least the continuing problem went away. I would absolutely do that, or you could consider the 347 and 68 version just to the right of it. So I would put a drip cap at the top. Now, speaking of drip caps, let's go to page 164, which is a couple pages up. I would add, now we're talking about the bottom of the opening, I would add, like what you have now, I would put something there, even though it's horrible, because you can't have an effective seal at the bottom of the door when you're dragging it across your opening. I would install the 3452 in place of what you have, and make that bristle pretty much just stand down on top of the material without it really making too much contact, except that it's there. Will give you a barrier, even though it's not tight down on the floor where you've got to drag it across your opening, but it gives you the drip cap. The drip cap is really where we're going with this conversation. Now, the real effective way to seal the bottom of the door is going to be on page, start scrolling up, and let's look to get to page 153. 153 is going to give you some door bottoms. Depending on the surface of the floor, I might use the 4301 NBL or the PKL. Surface area is the key when it comes to weather stripping. Let's just go with the 4301 because it's bristle, and we're going to stick with bristle. And I would bet that you have, if you have an irregular floor surface, I would go with that. If you have a smooth, like a concrete floor surface, you might have, radiant heat actually built into the concrete floor. You might go with the PKL version. It will give you good surface area. Now, that's an automatic door bottom. And an automatic door bottom is an outrageously effective piece of hardware that will allow you to seal the bottom of a door and do so in such a way where you're not going to drag something across the floor. The principle of an automatic door bottom is that when the door opens, the seal that is sealing the bottom of the door snaps back up in place. Pretty much within the first 5 or 10 degree, it's tucked back up. Those are always installed on the push side of the door. That won't work in your scenario because you don't have a traditional jamb that this would require for you to have for it to be installed. You would install this on the pull side, the inside, it's surface mounted, and then Pemco manufactures a piece of hardware that is in essence a plastic triangular block that will mount to the face of your frame, and your door bottom is going to sit on the door, automatic door bottom, and this plunger. So, automatic door bottom, this is the triangular piece of material that will surface mount to the face of the frame, so that when the door opens, the plunger, that's referred to in this crude sketch here, is attached to a flat spring. When the plunger is depressed, the flat spring is compressed, pushing the door bottom down. As soon as you open the door, tension on the flat spring is released because the plunger can resume its normal extended position. So every time you push the door closed, plunger gets depressed, flat spring gets compressed, bottom drops. As soon as you open the door, the flat spring is pushing back out on the plunger, and when there's nothing left for there in its place to keep it depressed, it will snap back up in place. And that triangular piece of material is what allows that to work, because as the door opens like this, the plunger is allowed to extend. Very crude drawing. I don't see this block in the Pemco catalog for any reason, and I've sold it 100 times, but it's just a piece of hardware that allows the conversion of a automatic door bottom from a traditional push side mount, like in your case on the exterior, to an interior mount. Now, you could mount it on the outside, and that'd be great, because what are we talking about? Barrier to the exterior as best as possible. That's where you want your line of defense. You could do that by having welded on, or simply screwed on, I suppose, an L bracket or an L angle to the bottom hinge side, what would be the hinge side of your opening. What is the hinge side of your opening? That would work out as well. You'd have a little tang that would stick off perpendicular to the face of the lipped steel frame. Definite drip cap at the bottom as well, no doubt, whether that door bottom goes on the inside or the outside. Now, certainly you're going to have some disruption on the weather stripping where you have lock sets installed, and something tells me, and of course where your pivots are installed as well, and that's why it would be nice to have that V cushion installed, because it will capture your loss of energy in those areas where the applied bristle may not work as well. And you can also apply all of that to I suppose you could put the bristle on the inside of your opening as well, on the face of the door, but you can't do it on the hinge side is the problem. So in the interest of being uniform with it, I'm thinking the inside. Yeah, it looks like you have a concrete sill there, so I would probably go with, or it's hard to tell if it's a threshold. It might, whatever it is, I'd probably be very tempted to go with the bristle. Looking, and I'm just scrolling through your photographs to see if there are any last minute changes I would make to anything that I've said. It looks like this door was reclaimed, like, it was used somewhere else, and that's great. I would shudder to think what it would cost to replace that, to have a custom steel door welded like that by a fabricator who basically just took a bunch of stock, profiles of steel and welded it all together. Not difficult work to do, being someone who welds material as well, but nonetheless, cost. Cost. Stock profiles of steel are expensive. Your astragal on the paradoors, that's easy. That's easy to do. You can use the same bristle concept. So obviously, you want to put something self-adhesive? Great, go for it. Done. You'll be able to find something that will sure solve the problem. However, the issue is, whether you are poor or you are rich, or you are intelligent or you are less than intelligent, people generally do not engage in regular maintenance. Self-adhesive is going to require regular maintenance. If you want to set the work up so that you really can put the work in on the front end and then kind of forget about it, I think the approach that I've brought allows you to do that. If it was me personally, I would use my approach, and I would weather strip it my way, and I would exert all of the time and energy to get it exactly perfect. That's just how I do it. Having said that, I'm admittedly in the minority of people who would take that approach. So if you want something that will be reasonably effective, self-adhesive, you scroll through the rest of the Pemco catalog, you'll find the material. If you were to do it, Control F on your keyboard for P397, P as in Papa, 397, you're going to get to the section of that book where you are going to find self-adhesive foam tape. Easy work. You can put it on, use it for the winter, next year, peel it all off, put on new stuff, and keep it going. But the problem that you have is the thickness of that steel frame. That is going to prove a task that will test your innate level of patience, because you will need to drill and you will need to tap, in my opinion. Otherwise, you can use self-drilling screws, but the problem is you're going to have that drill point sticking through the face of the lip of the frame, making contact with the face of the door. You could come in and grind those off if you wanted. To me, it would not be what I would want to do. Sorry about this extensively long response. I feel that your question required an appropriate response, and here it is. If you have any questions and want to continue this further, great, no problem. If you find that you come to the conclusion, hey Rich, I really appreciate all the time that you put into it, great, but I'm just going to have to go with self-adhesive because I don't have the desire at this moment to go with a sophisticated solution. I got that, I understand it as well. It's just you asked for an answer, and self-adhesive, in my opinion, is not it, even though it is acknowledged as a possible solution. Have a great Sunday. Thank you.